Republican Senator Marco Rubio. Senator, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Bret.
Let's start with Ukraine. Today you came out of this briefing and you told reporters this is dangerous, potentially catastrophic, and could escalate.
Yeah.
How serious is this at this moment?
Well, there's two things, right? There's the invasion of Ukraine, which would be deeply problematic because it would be returning to a world in which powerful countries can just take over their neighbors, right? I mean, that's the claim Russia makes about Eastern Europe, and that's ultimately the claim that China's making about Asia, that all these states are supposed to be vassal states that are tributary states to them. So that would be a big development. But the second thing to keep in mind in all of this is the potential for miscalculation and escalation. You've got the largest Russian military operations going on, exercises in 35 or 40 years. You've got NATO countries on a heightened level of military readiness, and they're right close to each other. And so there's always that potential. We've already seen some pretty aggressive Russian actions in terms of navigating close to ships and things of this nature, and some of the reporting, including the Brits. So there's a lot to be concerned about. And then the notion of cyber warfare. If Putin launches cyber warfare, we've never had a cyber war. We don't know how quickly that escalates, what that can become. So there's a lot to worry about here in terms of this thing escalating beyond Ukraine.
Well, should Americans be concerned about cyber retaliation in some way, shape or form from Russia if, for example, critical infrastructure, that sort of thing, if the Russians respond that way?
I mean, I think cyber vulnerabilities is something people are aware of. We've seen it because of cybercrime. We've seen it because of ransomware. And so there's always the concern that a nation state with advanced cyber capabilities, a Russia today, a China tomorrow, could launch some attacks. The problem with cyber is these are not precise weapons. They're blunt instruments. And sometimes when you cyber attack a system, you think the outcome and the impact is going to be one thing, and it turns out to be something far more serious. So then the other country has to respond, and you start escalating. No one's ever conducted this cyber warfare before. There's not really a doctrine or rules of the road or anything that govern it. So I think we have to have two goals in mind. There has to be real consequences for an invasion of Ukraine, and at the same time, we have to ensure that we do not allow this to escalate beyond Ukraine into something broader.
How has this administration handled this, in your opinion? What about these coming out publicly and sharing what they know about possible false flag operations and when maybe Putin might move? What do you think of that?
Well, I think time will tell about whether that worked or not. Look, if there's not an invasion and Putin is dissuaded from invading, then that would be a great outcome, and I think that's one way to go about it. If it doesn't happen that way, then people have to have a different opinion about it. My view of it is that when something this big that involves global and national security is engaged, I think the political accountability is going to come later if mistakes were made. I think right now, though, we need to be focused on two things, as I said. There has to be consequences, not American troops. We're not going to go send Americans to fight in Ukraine, but there has to be real consequences for an invasion. But we also have to make sure we manage this very carefully so it doesn't escalate into something far more dangerous and potentially catastrophic. We don't want to see that.
Two more quick things. You just heard the report on the Durham investigation and what you've heard about that so far. Your thoughts?
This is a big deal. I mean, it's shocking to me that this is not receiving more coverage in the press. I don't think any of the Sunday shows mentioned it. But what we're talking about here is not simply this, the probe using data scientists to make up a story or links between Trump and Russia, but the White House. Apparently there was a private company that had a contract to manage servers for the President of the United States and the White House, and they were sharing information to help build a narrative for a political operation. And you know why? If this is all proven true, it would be one of the biggest political scandals in American history. It would be a crime, no doubt about it, and it would tell you why these people think they can get away with it. They think they can get away with it because the media will not report on it. If this was the other way, if this was a story about how the Trump campaign had hired some data experts and others to go out there and do this to a President Clinton, this would be like we wouldn't be able to talk about anything else around here.
Yeah. Senator, we're covering it extensively. We're going to ask a Democrat about it just after the break. But here's what they say. Why are Republicans seemingly not as alarmed about President Trump's handling of documents compared to worries about Hillary Clinton's emails? Both former National Security Advisor Sandy Berger, former CIA Director John Deutsch, slapped with criminal penalties for mishandling national security documents. We know there are the 15 boxes down in Mar-a-Lago. There's allegations of flushing documents down the toilet in the Oval Office that the former president has denied. How do you answer that?
Well, first of all, I don't know what's true and what's not, because they've made up so many stories about Donald Trump over the years that, I mean, things that I just knew were flat out untrue. But nowadays, in the mainstream media, you just need one source to smear Donald Trump. Maybe you don't even need that. So it's hard to tell anymore what really happened and what didn't. The documents that were in Mar-a-Lago, by all accounts, were turned over. Look, if the process wasn't followed there, then there needs to be something that happens about that. It's not a crime, I don't believe. But the stuff about flushing paper down the toilet, who knows if that's even true? These people, I mean, at this point, I've seen at least a dozen things said about Trump that turned out to be complete lies. Somebody just make it up, and some in the media just run with it as it's truth. I've seen books with things in there that I know were not true, and they're widely reported as established facts. So that's why it's so difficult to take anything they say seriously. But what I'm talking about with what happened with Clinton, that's not some reporter, that's not some story in the New York Times. That's a federal pleading in federal court.
Senator Rubio, thank you very much for your time, and this is a tense time. We appreciate you.
Thank you.